Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayana Namaskrita Naram Chaiva Narottama Devam Saraswatim Vyasyam Jatutayam Madhuriyat Nashtapaya Surabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashloki Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So good morning, everyone. I am not able to share my screen.
You
I
can
think I
share
need
the
to.
screen. Today is Sunday, so there's no problem. But I did make you co-host also.
Oh, it looks like Vindyavali's co-host, which is fine.
No.
Vindyavali, you can share your screen.
Okay.
Very good.
Oh,
Okay.
God.
Okay.
Thank God you told me.
Excellent. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the third canto. We are chapter 15 and verse 30. The chapter is entitled Description of the Kingdom of God. So I'll read this 3 times. This is in the Brahma Samhita meter. So I'll read this 3 times and then we'll take turns repeating. Yatsan kulam harira padanati matra dishter Vaidurya margarakata hema mayar vimanyaye Yesham brihat kati tatashmita sobi muktya Krishnat manamna raja adur muyuktmaya yade. Excuse me, sorry. Yat sankulam haripadannati matra drishter Vaidurya marrakata hema maya vimanane Yesham brihat kati tatashmita sobi muktya Krishnat manamna raja adur utmayade Yatsan kulam haripada natimatra drishter Vaidurya marakata hema mayarvi manne Yesham brihat katita tashmita sobi mukya Krishnatam natmanam naraja adur utmaya dayade. Someone else like to try?
Yat sankulam haripada padanati matra drishtair Vaiduryamarkata hema mayer vimanaye Yesham brihat kati tata smita shobha mukhaye Krishnatmanam naraja adhur utsamaya day.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else
Hare
like to
Krishna.
try?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, go ahead.
Yat sankulam haripadanati matra tishtair Baidura markata hema mayer bhimanaye Esham brihat katik tata smita sabhi Krismat manam narajo adadur utsamai dhyaye. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. Anyone else?
Yachankulam haripadanati drishtair Vaiduryamarkata hema mayer vimane Yesham brihat katitatasmita shobhimukhyai Krishnatmanam na raja adadur utsmayadhyai.
Hare Krishna. Anyone else like to try?
Hare Krishna. I just go.
Hare Krishna.
Yatasankulam haripedanati matra drishtair Vaidurya markatu hemam mayer vimanahi Yesham brihat kati tataha smita shobhi mukya Krishnat manam na raja raj adudur utsamaya diya hai. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Very good. Thank you. Okay, let's do word for word translation. Yat. That Vaikuntha abode, Sankulam, is pervaded, Haripada, at the two lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anati, by obeisances. Matra, simply. Drishta, art obtained. Vaidurya, lapis lazuli. Marakata, emeralds. Hema, gold. Maya, made of. Vimanaya, with airplanes. Yesham, of those passengers. Brihat, large. Kati tataha, hips. Shmita, smiling. Shobhi, beautiful. Mukhya, faces. Krishna, in Krishna. Atmanam, whose minds are absorbed. Na, not. Raja, sex desire. Adudo, stimulate. Utsmaya, adiya, by intimate friendly feelings, laughing and joking. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. Although crowded by their consorts, who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. Purport. In the material world, opulences are achieved by materialistic persons by dint of their labor. One cannot enjoy material prosperity unless he works very hard to achieve it. But the devotees of the Lord, who are residents of Vaikuntha, have the opportunity to enjoy a transcendental situation of jewels and emeralds. Ornaments made of gold bedecked with jewels are achieved not by working hard, but by the benediction of the Lord. In other words, devotees in the Vaikuntha world, or even in this material world, cannot be poverty-stricken, as is sometimes supposed. They have ample opulences for enjoyment, but they need not labor to achieve them. It is also stated that in the Vaikuntha world, the consorts of the residents are many, many times more beautiful than we can find in this material world, even in the higher planets. It is specifically mentioned here that a woman's large hips are very attractive and they stimulate a man's passion. But the wonderful feature of Vaikuntha is that although the women have large hips and beautiful faces and are decorated with ornaments of emerald and jewels, the men are not so absorbed in Krishna consciousness that the beautiful bodies of the women cannot attract them. In other words, there is enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The residents of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there is no need of sex pleasure. Om Jnana Timaranjasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tashme Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mayam Dadati Svadvatantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Charaswamaniti Namane Snigta Chaita Surpanita Vagmanam Charasaplitam Prabhupada Katapranam Bhakti Charapan. Hare Krishna, everyone. Good morning. So I'm going to read this translation again, and then we'll get into a little bit of discussion around this. The inhabitants of Vaikuntha travel in their airplanes made of lapis lazuli, emerald, and gold. Although crowded by their consorts who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated to passion by their mirth and beautiful charms. So I'm sure we've been getting a lot of review on what's happening here, but we know that Aditi is holding on to her sons and Hiranya and Hiranyakashipu that are demons, and she's holding on to them for 100 years, but it's created so much darkness in the universe because of this impending doom. And so Lord Brahma, being who he is, he knows what's about to happen, but instead of allowing the doom, the nescience, the darkness to overtake, he starts in order to conquer that and cut through, he begins to glorify Vaikuntha. And Lord Brahma's done this before. He has a history of getting a glimpse into the spiritual sky with Lord Vishnu, with Krishna, and he's done it before. But here he's really giving a deep, beautiful description of the Vaikuntha planets to help, break through the darkness that's overcoming the universe. And so that's just a quick synopsis of what's going on here. And what we can gather from today's verse is this additional description of the the opulence that is contained here in the Vaikuntha in the Vaikuntha planets, and this opulence is something that is inherently there. It is not these opulences are not something that have to be worked for. They are not something that they have to ask for, right? The inhabitants of Vaikuntha are they are just there. They're there, enjoying, but they're enjoying in the mood of remembering and enjoying in the mood of devotion and in that relationship with the Supreme. So, and Prabhupada points out in his purport a couple of good, really good things to keep in mind. And I'm going to read, I actually, in prepping for this class today, I came across a really nice blog by Giriraj Swami. So I'm going to dig into that blog a little bit because it very much pertains to what we're discussing today. So I'm going to just pull out a couple of key points from Srila Prabhupada's purport. And then we're going to dig into Giriraj Swami's blog that he wrote, I think it was last year, because it's just so relevant, and it's just really another beautiful kind of understanding of opulences as they pertain to the spiritual world and here. So Prabhupada says again in the purport that in the material world, opulences are achieved by materialistic persons by dint of their labor, right? So often, although not always, sometimes someone's born into a very fortunate, very wealthy situation where they're given all of these opulences. You see this in royalty. You see this in very wealthy families that people are born into this opulence. But someone at some point had to have worked for that opulence, most likely. May not have been in this generation. It may have been one generation ago or three generations ago. But someone at some point had to do something to get there. Maybe they conquered another territory. Maybe they, their family killed the king and became king. So there's so many different ways we've seen in history that families can come into riches. Okay. Some sort of hard work, some sort of boon that just happened. Maybe they, or some sort of, monarchy that collapsed and another family came into ruling. So these are things, like I said, we see them even in Bhagavatam. So we know in the material world that these opulences are by dint of some labor or something. They just aren't automatically a given. Even if one can in one lifetime take advantage of those opulences, they came from effort somewhere along the line in the lineage. And so Prabhupada makes a point to say this, that these ornaments and these jewels and all of these things in Vaikuntha, these are benedictions of the Lord. But here in the material world, these are things that we have to work for, that very hard. And we can even see some, leaders that want to do things, palaces of, this is gold or a gold ballroom or this or that, So we can see that the opulences are very much appreciated because the gold, the jewels are very much coming also from that spiritual sky. They are the most of opulences. They are the highest of opulences. And so with these opulences being so desired in because they are also a reflection of the spiritual world. They're also wanted here very much, these things here in the material world. But they do not come but without some sort of effort or some sort of process of overtaking something. So, and Prabhupada also brings in just to kind of wrap up some points about this purport. Prabhupada also talks about, the beautiful women that are in Vaikuntha, and they're so beautiful and they're so bedecked with all of these jewels, and they have they're curvy, they're beautiful, and yet the men are just unperturbed by the whole thing. They have complete control. They are appreciating the women and their beauty, but their focus is on the Lord. And so this is a very it's actually a very lovely way of kind of depicting this, where even though it's depicting these beautiful women, the men are very much, they're appreciating the women, they're and their beauty, but their minds are focused on how to serve the Lord and not about just taking that beauty. And I think in the material energy, in this very conquering kind of mood that we often see in the material world. We see this conquering of wealth, conquering of land, conquering of other power sources, of the power. Uh, Often there's this conquering when one sees a beautiful woman that they have to have it. That is a conquest. And often you hear about, men in, different examples, men seeing women as a conquest, right? And so this is very much a material expression of that, but in Vaikuntha, that's not how it's laid out. And so this is really important, and it's how women are seen there in Vaikuntha as beautiful and lovely, but not as a means of conquest, not as something that the men should just have, be desirous of. And so all of these things here in Vaikuntha, we're getting just a snapshot. This is literally just a snapshot. This is not all of the spiritual creation. This is just all that Lord Brahma can share to us through the parampara. So we're just and what we can conceive of in our material minds, because our material minds are so limited that we don't have the conception to really fully understand all of the energies and the opulences that are in Vaikuntha. And this is something that's really important to keep in mind too, that we're not getting the full scope of it. We're just getting this tiny little speck of what has been passed down through the parampara through Lord Brahma that we can actually conceive of in our own minds and we can comprehend. So we have to really remember that this is, this is the most that we can really take in as living entities. Okay. So I want to dive into, with the rest of the time, I want to dive into Giriraj Swami's in his blog, because it just so deeply tied into today's verse. I just thought that I would just speak to some of these things. And so Giriraj's blog starts off with, he says, he's talking about Bali Maharaj and the boons that were given to Bali Maharaj. And he talks about how Krishna has expertly given opulences to his aspiring devotees like Bali Maharaj. And so Giriraj Swami says, while on one hand he grants a lot to some, but on the other hand, he takes away from others. And so we can see this paradox almost. This is like the kind of Krishna paradox. It's that, with some devotees, they get all of the opulences, and some devotees are completely bereft of, these material gains. And how do we know who gets what? We don't, but Krishna knows. So Giriraj Swami goes on to say, and I'll read this verbatim, it is a misplaced perception that Krishna does not grant opulence to his devotees. In fact, his devotees receive limitless opulence. There are so many examples in Bhagavatam. Sudama, the fruit seller in Mathura, Dhruva, Bhagavatam also spells out why and why not. As usual, it boils down to our consciousness or lack thereof. Here are some keys. Okay, so opulence comes by the will of the Supreme Lord. And this is, now I'm going to read this pastime with Bali Maharaj. My dear king, Bali Maharaj, donated all his possessions to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vamanadev, but one should certainly not conclude he achieved his great worldly opulence in Vilashvarga as a result of his charitable disposition. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the source of all life for all living entities, lives within everyone as the friendly super soul, and under his direction, a living entity enjoys or suffers in the material world. Greatly appreciating the transcendental qualities of the Lord, Bali Maharaj offered everything at his lotus feet. His purpose, however, was not to gain anything material, but to become a pure devotee. For a pure devotee, the door of liberation is automatically opened. One should not think that Bali Maharaj was given so much material opulence merely because of his charity. When one becomes a pure devotee in love, he may also be blessed with a good material position by the will of the Supreme Lord. However, one should not mistakenly think that the material opulence of a devotee is the result of his devotional service. The real result of devotional service is the awakening of pure love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which continues under all circumstances. So this is something that is really important, because so often like we said, in material life, we see people around us seeking that opulence and seeking wealth or fame or riches. And some get it, some are very poor. And how is it decided who gets what? And only Krishna is deciding, and there are consequences sometimes to these boons that are received as well. So, but here, um, you know, uh, he's talking. Gary Swami is talking about the look who is directly serving Krishna and his devotees. It says. So these are some things that these are some pointers on opulence. So we want to look to see who is serving the Krishna and his devotees. Devotional service to the Lord is likened unto a queen. When a queen gives an audience, many maidservants follow her. The maidservants of devotional service are material opulence, liberation, and mystic powers. So this is kind of interesting. And these are all coming from Srimad Bhagavatam or from Shastra. So this was Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 423. Um, so according to the desires of Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, the supreme personality of Godhead made his bosom her residence, so that by her glance she could favor everyone, including the demigods and ordinary human beings. In other words, since the goddess of fortune stays on the bosom of Narayan, she naturally sees any devotee who worships Narayan. When the goddess of fortune understands that a devotee is in favor of devotional service to Narayan, she is naturally inclined to bless the devotee with all opulences. The karmis try to achieve the favor and mercy of Lakshmi, but because they are not devotees of Narayan, their opulence is flickering. The opulence of devotees who are attached to the service of Narayan is not like the opulence of karmis. The opulence of devotees is as permanent as the opulence of Narayan himself. So this is another thing to be considered, is that the one who is praying, and we see this, right? You've all probably seen or maybe even been to one or two there are different pujas and arti, offerings, and there's different samskaras that are given to the different personalities for specific boons. And the the different uh, pujas and samskaras that are for Lakshmi, for money, for opulences. But this is not going to give the right kind of opulence in the long run. It's not properly placed in that mood. This is, and like I said, we see this, to pray to, or do some sort of, uh, offering to Saraswati for the children to have good education, or you know, different prayers to Ganesh, or for relieving different difficulties and obstacles, or prayers, so we can go on. I mean, we've all kind of experienced various degrees of this through other people, maybe in our families or whatever that is. We may have come across this in our lives at some point. These different offerings and samskaras that are available to get something back. But this is the really important point. In today's verse, all of the opulences that were received in Vaikuntha were not because that the inhabitants of Vaikuntha wanted the opulences. They were just there. They were just there. They were just a package deal. They weren't lusting after the opulences. They weren't lusting after the women. Everyone was just there enjoying in a natural state, not with deep attachment to all of these things. It was very natural. It was very much just a part of that arrangement, the comforts that come in that scenario when one enters into that state, when one enters into Vaikuntha Loka. So these are things that we cannot replicate here in the material energies. Why? Because in the material energies, we know that we have attachments. We know that anything that occurs in the material energies is temporary. It's not an illusion. It's temporary. Illusory means it's not going to be permanent. It's not going to stay. And so when we see these illusory energies, these temporary energies, and we see these things occurring, we can know that they're, especially if they were not received in the right mood. If someone is very attached to their wealth, someone is very attached to obtaining wealth or attached to obtaining very beautiful things. You hear about women who, and I've experienced this directly, with different women who say they have to have a rock on their hands, right? They want the rock on their finger to get married. That is, that's going to show the love that they have to have that rock. They have to have that 2 carat diamond. That's a big diamond. That's a lot of rock. And but this is not the right mood, right? Because to get the rock means that they love is the love, the proof of love is how big of the stone. This is not Krishna's. Krishna does not create this kind of transaction in Vaikuntha. He is not giving these jewels and gems to say, I will, if you do this for me, I'm going to give you this. And the inhabitants of Vaikuntha are not saying, if you give me all of these jewels and all of this wealth, then I will love you more. This is a transactional experience. But that is not present in Vaikuntha. However, it is extremely present here in the material energies. As much as we try not to, right? There might be transactional relationships that are less ostentatious, right? Than wanting a 2 carat diamond as an engagement ring to show that they are loved by their betrothed. There's more subtle things that we can see, and so this continues on. So now I'm going to give another point from Giri Rajswami of some of these clues about opulence. Opulence, and this is another point he makes. Opulence should be utilized properly. Opulence should be utilized properly. So I'm going to give you another quote from Bhagavatam, Canto 7. Material achievements are not the ultimate goal of devotional service. The ultimate goal of devotional service is love of Godhead. Therefore, although Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, Ambarish Maharaj, Yudhisthira Maharaj, and many devotee kings were materially very opulent, they accepted their material opulence in the service of the Lord, not for their personal sense gratification. Of course, possessing material opulence is always fearful because under the influence of material opulence, one may be misdirected from devotional service. Nonetheless, a pure devotee is never misdirected by material opulence. On the contrary, whatever he possesses, he engages 100% in the service of the Lord. When one is allured by material possessions, they are considered to be given by Maya. But when one uses material possessions fully for service, they are considered God's gift or facilities offered by Krishna for enhancing one's devotional life. So I'm going to give an example of Srila Prabhupada. When he was here on earth, he had nothing to start with, but then all of a sudden he had all these temples and he had more money flowing in. Some of the temples were very beautiful and opulent comparatively. And so there were people at the time who accused him of gaining wealth, of collecting wealth. But he was always he set the example that he was very detached from that wealth. He was using it all for Krishna's service. So although it may have appeared that at times, Prabhupada had a nice car that he was arriving to an event in, or he, had, a nice room in a temple. He always was very, very modest and was not looking for all of the material opulences. He only just wanted to put that back into preaching, putting that money back into growing the movement. And so this is the proper utilization of wealth. And Krishna, provided through the energies of all of the devotees that were present then, but mostly because of Prabhupada and his purity of heart, that Krishna provided all of this. Who could possibly, in 10 years, have built over 100 temples and created all these centers? it's impossible in 10 years to do all this. I mean, even some of the best business people can't expand to that degree. Um, that's some serious franchising that happens, and that's a lot, and especially to keep it as a movement and continuing to have all these people involved. That's a significant undertaking. But Krishna bestowed obviously, he bestowed these boons on Srila Prabhupada because Srila Prabhupada was single focused, completely single focused in his heart and single focused in his endeavors in wanting to grow the Krishna consciousness movement and to carry out the orders of his spiritual master, which was to bring Krishna consciousness into the West and bring it through Lord Chaitanya's movement to every town and village, which he very much planted many, many seeds to achieve that end. But when it's not used properly, and we see examples of that all the time, all we have to do is just, open our news feed for the day and we can see examples of that. That's temporary. It's not going to, we're not here to judge or say you're going to go to hell or you're going to go to a lower planet or you're going to come back as a hog, like Indra did. But we can observe and say this might not bode well for them in the long run in their next life. So, so it's really important that these opulences are used for the right purpose and that they are not seen as a possession. And this is something that's really important as well. So here, I love this one, and I'm gonna skip a couple of them because I just want to go right to this one. A devotee's opulence is eternal. So here it is. One should engage in full devotional service. Then, even though he has no desires whatsoever, whatever desires he previously had can be all be fulfilled simply by his worship of the Lord. The actual devotee does not even desire liberation. The Lord, however, fulfills the desire of the devotee by awarding him opulence that will never be destroyed. A karmi's opulence is destroyed, but the opulence of a devotee is never destroyed. A devotee becomes more and more opulent as he increases his devotional service to the Lord. So we can think that is our consciousness. The opulence is coming through the relationship with the Lord. And I'll continue on. So these are Srimad Bhagavatam verses. When, in spite of possessing all these opulences, a person is not proud, this means that he is fully aware that all his opulences are due to the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He therefore engages all his possessions in the service of the Lord. A devotee knows very well that everything, even his body, belongs to the Supreme Lord. If one lives perfectly in such Krishna consciousness, it is to be understood that he is especially favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The conclusion is that one's being deprived of his wealth is not to be considered the special mercy of the Lord. If one continues in his opulent position but does not become unnecessarily proud, falsely thinking that he is the proprietor of everything, this is the Lord's special mercy. And here, when does Krishna not bestow opulence on a devotee? And here's another one, and this is in Krishna book, chapter 81. Oops. Okay. Krishna knows that many great personalities have fallen from their position because of extravagant opulence. Therefore, when his devotees ask for some opulence from him, the Lord sometimes does not give it. He is very cautious about his devotees because a devotee in an immature position of devotional service may, if offered great opulence, fall from his position due to being in the material world. The Lord does not offer opulence to him. This is another manifestation of the causeless mercy of the Lord upon seeing his devotee. His first interest is that the devotee not fall. He is exactly like a well-wishing father who does not give much wealth into the hands of his immature son, but who, when the son is grown up and knows how to spend money, gives him the whole treasury house. And I really love this understanding because it's really Krishna is our ever well-wisher. He is always looking to take care of us and protect us. And especially if we have shown a desire in establishing a relationship with Krishna. And when we have made that effort and when we have made that step toward the Lord, we will maybe experience some some benedictions and maybe even in some difficulties. But oftentimes, and I've experienced this personally. I've heard other people share this experience, but when we're early in our spiritual lives, we're given little things that make it very easy and accessible. Maybe we get little boons, maybe we have a little win financially that gives us a little extra charge so that we can, have enough money on our plate so we're not in distress. So we're not in distress because Christian doesn't want us to be in distress. If we're in distress about our material situation, then we can't focus on our very well. We can't focus very well in our spiritual lives. So Christian might give us some little things that help us in our spiritual progress. And like I said, it might be he might give us a raise or or a promotion with our job. He might bestow some other benediction, make something a little bit smoother. The access to devotees and chanting, all these things might be very easy in the beginning. And this is how it's like a child. And I love this example of giving money to a son, an immature son or a child. When you have those of you who have children, if any of you give your children allowance or have them do chores, I know I had to do chores when I was a kid. I had to earn my allowance. But as the chores were small when I was younger, and then I was able to do more and more chores, and then I went out and got my own job when I was 12. So I was given more and more responsibility. But if you give your children your credit card at 7 years old and say, okay, well, don't buy too much with this, and you don't set any limits, and you just hand them a credit card with a $20,000 limit on it, and aren't clear with them what their limitations are, that it's a $20,000 limit credit card, you might be surprised to have a maxed out credit card in a short period of time. And so this is what really is being said here, is that when we teach responsibility to our children, we teach financial responsibility, we slowly give them more and more and more. And then eventually they might have their own account or their own card or whatever that looks like. So now that's looking at the immature devotee. Now let's see what Krishna does for the mature devotee. So if one is placed in material opulence due to the special mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he should not consider that opulence a cause for bondage. When a mature devotee is blessed with material opulence, he does not become affected adversely, for he knows how to employ material opulence in the service of the Lord. There are many such examples in the history of the world. There were kings like Prithu Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, Janaka, Dhruva, Vaishvata Manu, and Maharaj Ikshvaku. All of these were great kings and were especially favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If a devotee is not mature, the Supreme Lord will take away all his opulence. The principle stated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Yashyaham anugrahinami hrishtite tad dhanam sane. My first mercy shown to my devotees to take away all his material opulence. Material opulence detrimental to devotional service is taken away by the Supreme Lord, whereas a person who is mature in devotional service is given all material facilities. So this is interesting. So a devotee might actually become very bereft of any kind of wealth or material opulence early on if those things are a distraction to spiritual activities. And they very well can be. They very well can be. We can see when one comes into money, this is a really, kind of a very exaggerated example, but when someone is very poor and they win the lottery, what do? They go and they spend it. Majority is especially people that are in like that lower income bracket. If they win the lottery, and that's usually who's playing the lottery, unfortunately, is people who in the lower income brackets. They win the lottery And they may have been, they're playing the lottery, they're hoping for big riches. And maybe at that point they are going to church, you know, they're uh they're but they're just playing the lottery just to, see if they can get a little money to fix their house or do this or that. Suddenly they hit it big. All right. So you've got this nice, sweet church-going family. They're very they're more pious, and suddenly they win the lottery and boom, everything changes. And these are those kind of situations you hear about where it's everything changes. They go and they spend, 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 spend. Um, and then it's all gone. It's all gone. They have nothing to show for it. They've spent all of the money. They've used it improperly. They were not as focused in more the piety, and now it's gone. So when in those situations, because material opulence can be so alluring and it can bring us seemingly so much material happiness, the problem is that that material happiness, as we know, is very fleeting. Um, However, material happiness is it's fleeting, and especially when it's tied to, things that we're buying. If we're buying our happiness over and over again, that material happiness is bound to be a disturbance down the road because we can't maintain it. We can't maintain it. However, of course, there is happiness to be found outside of that, and that joy and happiness is really coming through that remembrance and the relationship with the Lord. So here it is, kind of the sum bonum of all of this. A devotee's ultimate achievement is to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord in any one of the planets in the spiritual sky. As a result of rigid execution of devotional service, a devotee receives all material opulences if these are required. Otherwise, the devotee is not interested in material opulences, nor does the Supreme Lord award them. When a devotee is actually engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, his apparently material opulences are not material, they are all spiritual. For example, if a devotee spends money to construct a beautiful and costly temple, the construction is not material, but spiritual. A devotee's mind is never diverted to the material side of the temple. The bricks, stone, and wood used in the construction of the temple are spiritual, just as the deity, although made of stone, is not stone but the Supreme Personality of Godhead Himself. The more one advances in spiritual consciousness, the more one can understand the elements of devotional service. Nothing in devotional service is material, everything is spiritual. Consequently, a devotee is awarded so-called material opulence for spiritual advancement. This opulence can aid to help the devotee advance toward the spiritual kingdom. So this is really what we want to use it for. And finally, Krishna knows what's best for each one of us. And as we're going through these different understandings of opulences today, we know that at the end of the day, Krishna is in our hearts as Paramatma, as Chaitya Guru, and Krishna is the one that is determining all of this. And especially if we make that decision to engage and step toward Krishna and engaging in a relationship, then Krishna is really going to be the one who is deciding what we get. And so any appeal, any sort of plea, any sort of attempted transaction that we make with Krishna could be in vain if Krishna decides that that's not what we need. That's not what we need for our Krishna consciousness. So this last verse that I'll read, and then I'll open it up for any comment. Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. If a devotee maintains some material desire and at the same time very sincerely desires to engage at the lotus feet of Krishna, Krishna may directly give him unalloyed devotional service and take away all his material desires and possessions. This is the Lord's special favor to devotees. Otherwise, if one takes to Krishna's devotional service but still has material desires to fulfill, he may become free from all material desires, as Dhruva Maharaj did, but this may take some time. However, if a very sincere devotee wants only Krishna's lotus feet, Krishna directly gives him the position of Shuddha Bhakti, unalloyed devotional service. So I want to, it's 20 of, and I just would like at this point to open it up for any discussion or any questions that today's verse or anything from these last few weeks, anything that may have come to mind that you'd like to share or discuss. This is an open forum, and yeah, feel free to unmute if you have anything that you'd like to share.
Hare Krishna. If anybody is ready, please just unmute yourself and go ahead, or raise your hand. That's fine too. Um, what I wanted to appreciate is Srila Prabhupada's purports. Um, this is my first reading of these verses. I had not read these before, but I've heard about them all the time in classes. So it is really nice to see how what is being repeated is only what Prabhupada has been saying. And the other big thing is um, how many times we have to hear this over and over and over again for it to actually sink in, and then over and over and over again for us to practice it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is my appreciation and my realization is, and the thing about people relying on material happiness. We have a lot of examples around us, at least I do. I have a lot of people that I know within family who keep buying things thinking that will make them happy. They have so much more than they did 10 years ago. And I keep telling them, but I say, are you happier 10 years later with that much more stuff? The answer is no, but they continue to keep trying on that path. And I feel the reason I'm not trying to be on that path is because I'm hearing Prabhupada say again and again what Vyasdev has said in these Bhagavatam verses, Prabhupada has said in these purports. It's a useless endeavor. All the material gain will get us nowhere. All the honor and praise will get us nowhere. The real stuff is something else, and that is what we need to pursue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. And just, the repetition, I hear you with that because it is important. And, I think about this a lot in terms of my own spiritual path. And, when we are hearing things, Prabhupada is very pragmatic if you think about his approach. And really all of this is very pragmatic, right? There is that, deeper, more, I don't want to say the word sentimental, but kind of, that relationship component, that's very important. That, that relationship with God, that's why we're here. And there's also the very pragmatic component of anybody that's lived on the planet for more than a minute can see that the material energies are very difficult. That's undeniable that these energies are very difficult. And even more, shall we say, atheistic or agnostic thought pattern processes will say that you can't buy yourself through into happiness in the material world, right? That's psychology talks about that. Um, you hear about this concept of not buying love. Even the Beatles said, "Can't buy me love." It's you can't use wealth and opulence as a means for internal fulfillment. So this is a very pragmatic point to be made. And so if we even just, even if we're not, quite there where we're uh, able to achieve any sort of pure devotional life and become a pure devotee and, be doing everything in the name of serving the Lord, even if we just take a step back and say, this is just, this is not helping me in my life. This is not helping me emotionally. And it's not for my best well-being to be engaging in and chasing material gains. It may feel good temporarily, and of course, yeah, we want to have food on the table. We want to live in a comfortable house, so we want to have a car that doesn't break down on us all the time. But once we start getting beyond that, those needs being met and feeling okay enough that we can practice in our spiritual life, the net gains are smaller and smaller and smaller, right? Once our material needs are met, which is important, right? Even in Krishna talks about it in Bhagavad Gita, we need to cover our material needs. That's essential. It's said in Sri Ishopanishad too, but not taking more than what is our quota. And this is where opulence can be very confusing, because that's very much beyond our quota, the opulences. If they're given to us and we are say, okay, thank you, I'm going to use this now. I'm going to give to in charity. I'm going to create more sanghas and do kirtan and whatever it is, and use that money for those efforts. Then that's different. That's what's being said today. But if we're not in that mood of using that opulence for something that is beneficial for our spiritual life, and helping others, and helping serve in the mood of Krishna, and helping others in their devotional activities, it's not going to gain us much. Like I said, it's a law of diminishing returns. We have this immediate satiety of material desires of food, water, shelter, and above that, then it becomes a law of diminishing returns. We're not going to get that much more from those material gains and those opulences, really, in a material perspective. So that's the tricky part, and that's often we don't see that, and especially in the U.S. and in more developed countries, we see people chasing wealth all the time, thinking that there's going to be some big jump in their life and in their happiness, but it rarely comes, and it often creates more complications too, because then you have a fear of loss, fear of losing those
Yes.
gains.
Yes.
Then there's increased anxiety around it. So keep it
When you
simple.
don't have anything, the anxiety is to get more. When you get more, the anxiety is to not lose. So anxiety is what's there all the time.
All the time.
Um,
We have to find that sweet spot, I guess, right? The sweet spot of I have enough.
And I
You
think
know,
that happens again. That's where it brings me back to gratitude for Srila Prabhupada and what he has given us. And not only, he didn't just write a book and say, here's a book, go read it. And he has set up this system where we have this opportunity to listen every morning, every evening, every afternoon. They're just if you turn on the internet, there's just, 24 hours. You can listen to these classes live, or you can listen to classes on recording. You can listen to Srila Prabhupada, Prabhupada's recordings. Like he has made this system and he has emphasized, how to do it and why to do it.
yeah,
And it's that repeated association with him is what will help this point sink into us.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, Anybody else? Bhakta David, Suman Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Namaste.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your class. I was just reflecting on the fact that also having excess money is not always a temptation, or can become a temptation. It also invites other people who want that money and causing problems into your life too. So I have a tendency to not want more than what I need. Hi, Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, that's an excellent point, Prabhu. Certainly, wealthy people have targets on them. The more money we have, the more people want what we have to give in donations or, whatever that is, to buy them things. And it's a complication for sure. It's a complication, no doubt. And especially if one is it really comes down to one's consciousness. And one thing I was meditating on this morning is the how rare of a personality that there was a Dularba, this rareness of the person who is a pure devotee who is like a Dhruva Maharaj or Prahlad Maharaj or any. These are such rare personalities. And then the rest of us out here in the, swimming around in the material pool, um, uh, we have to navigate these things because most of us probably aren't. Um, these very elevated and exalted personalities that can handle these things very expertly. So, yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Hare Krishna
Shima?
Mataji. Very nice class. I really like that in the Vaikuntha planet, and there is intermingling of the different gender people who are living entities, but they are so pure. There is no lusty feeling there, and
Mm-hmm.
it is really lesson for us to, like, if we become pure, so we can clean up our mind. And another point I got that when we have more money, the life becomes complicated and very difficult to live a simple life. And the more simple life we live, there is a possibility of becoming develop more devotion and become more pure. So we
Yeah.
have to be very careful when there is money. We have to try to still live as a, like, in simple, simple way.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Shuman Mataji. Yeah. It's to both of your points, the first point with the purity of mind. Yeah, this comes from a really deep devotional service. And we may experience evidence of our progress through some of our desires drifting away naturally. And that's really the aim when they start drifting away and we're just like, oh, I don't really feel like doing that anymore. It just doesn't even appeal to me. And it's not like I feel aversion toward it. And we have to be very careful about aversion too. I could give a whole class, and maybe I will someday, on attachment and aversion, because they're two kind of, I feel like they're two sides of the same coin. We have to be very careful. They're both very bad for our spiritual life. So we should not be averse to wealth. We should not be averse to any of these things, but we should not be attached either. We want to maintain equanimity. But to your point, Schumann, the complication does increase, and especially with the wealth. Now you have to know what to do with your wealth. You have to maintain it. You have to put it in good investments, and if you have a big house, then you have to maintain the house, which might have a lot of mechanical components, and the land that goes with it. And that's all maintenance. That's maintenance costs. I mean, I live in a 150-year-old farmhouse. I am no stranger to maintenance costs. It's and the more we have, the more complicated things are. And so the simplicity that if we can strive for simplicity, that is certainly going to at least give us the space to make them a more sincere endeavor. Prabhupada focused so much on simple living, high thinking, and that simple living, high thinking mood is really just, he was looking at the farming communities. He was just looking at all of the ways that his disciples could be maintaining a simple lifestyle and having enough, just enough, that they're not in anxiety all the time, but to keep it simple so that they can keep the space less crowded and focus more of their activities on devotional life. So Yeah, thank you for all the good comments. Anything else before we wrap up for the day?
I'm listening about Vaikuntha planet. It's very, very, very interesting. And then I love to listen to, and I was imagining all that. That's good. And you know what? There, if women are beautiful, or men are having, and they have golden aeroplane, this, that, emeralds, jewels, everything is there, but nobody bothers anything.
Mm.
And then if women are beautiful, they are beautiful, that's it. And
Mhm.
they don't have any other, like this material world we have. There's one lady is beautiful, or something happens, and then people will talk about it. And other sexual life also, there's nothing is there. So that kind of life is beautiful. But this material life we are in, we see all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So that is one thing where, whether I can say unfortunate or we are fortunate in this material world, I don't know how to take it, this one. It's
Yeah.
very hard to live in here.
Yeah.
If you have big house, oh, that lady has very big house. What will they do? Then nobody, they don't want to give anybody. That's why they have that house. That kind of comment you get. If you have a small house, oh no, that house, they don't spend anything. They want to live like that poor living. See, all kinds of comments in this material world we do have. If we don't have this, we're peaceful, we're happy, but we have to do lot of devotional service to go to Vaikuntha. That is
Yeah.
main part.
That's clear.
That is clear.
That is very clear. Yeah. I mean, whether we are fortunate or not to be in these material energies, we wanted to be here. So
We
we got
want
what we
to be.
wanted.
I want to spend big house, and I want to have like luxurious this thing, jewelry, saree. No, that is not a thing. But that is not, that won't take anywhere. If I die, I leave everything and I'll
Everyone
go.
stays behind.
I don't
Yep.
know who to give, who I will go. I don't know anything. The
Yeah.
very first moment, I leave my breath, the breath. That's all. But that is the fact. Knowing, we all know that, still we are struggling in this material world. That is
Yeah.
a fun part of it.
It's tricky. The material energies are tough because we have to exist in them, and our bodies are material. So we're surrounded by material energies. It's very
Yeah,
difficult.
yeah,
We can't get away from it. And so it becomes very, we self-identify
yeah.
with the material energies. How could we not? Because I'm like, this is material. It's
Everything material. Once we lose it, we leave this breathing, this air goes. That's it, nothing. We
that's
don't know
it.
what they
Yeah.
will do with my body. I don't know. Whether
Nope.
they throw it off or they burn it and they'll bury
No
it.
idea.
No
Yeah.
idea.
Doesn't matter once we're
As
gone.
long as I live, I think about it. But
Yeah.
afterwards, nothing. So
Yeah.
these facts,
Exactly.
we all know these facts.
Hmm.
And every day I'm listening to this Bhagavatam, and I'm just, since this Aditi is, what she wanted, how she had the children with force, and she had, and afterwards how she felt, because they both are bad people,
Demons.
two
Yeah.
twins she had, but she wanted that, and afterwards she felt, but there's no point. Afterwards, she's feeling
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
these things. Knowingly, we do some things. We know that that's bad, but still we do some bad things.
Mhm. That's
Life
the
is
challenge.
something. Life is something. And since they're about describing Vaikuntha, since 2, 3 classes I am listening, how beautiful that is. those fragrant flowers, those gold and emeralds and everywhere and everything. And men are so good. And then they go in the airplane and they see with a watch concert, and they go and they see how much they are enjoying.
Hmm.
Very good. But still,
Yeah,
I had to work for it to go there.
exactly. Exactly. That's the lesson for today too.
That is
So
the lesson for today.
thank you so much for your for your comments and your feedback
Thank
on
you.
that. So I
Thank you
appreciate it.
very much.
Well, thank you all for coming today to class. It's always lovely to spend time with all of you, and
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy your day.
Yeah,
We'll
you
wrap
too.
up. Hare Krishna,
Vajra,
Vancha Kalpa,
Krishna,
Tarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhu,
Vajra,
Vyebhyacha,
Patitanam,
Patitanam, Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo,
Vaishnavibhyo, Namo
Namo
Namaha.
Namaha. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare
Have a
Krishna.
wonderful
Thank you very
day.
Hare
much.
Krishna. Take care.